It's November 26, 2022 at Lofi Stadium in Qatar. A few days ago, the world was shocked as Argentina's streak of dominance was ended by Saudi Arabia. Today's game has a sense of urgency. With the Saudi Arabia-Poland game ending 2-0 in favor of Poland, Argentina was suddenly in the hot seat. Dropped points for Argentina here would take away their ability to control their own destiny. And a loss will kick them out the World Cup, and it will end the believed last dance for a GOAT on the world stage. If you know soccer or at least watched the World Cup, you know what ended up happening. Two moments of magic from one team fighting for survival and a lack of urgency from the other. If the game went the other way, soccer would have a different world champ and the GOAT candidate wouldn't have the pinnacle of the sport in his trophy case. And speaking of trophy cases, some fans will say the 2022 World Cup finished the GOAT debate, while others say that the tournament is overrated and this specific tournament would be rigged. But let's be honest, a GOAT candidate having an iconic World Cup that ends with their team lifting the beautiful trophy could do a lot for the GOAT candidacy. You have the perfect World Cup. You have Maradona in '86, Ronaldo in 2002, Pelé in '70, Zidane in '98, 𝒂𝒄𝒌 in '18, and of course, Messi in 2022. It could do a lot for public perception in defining who's the greatest. In Pelé's, Maradona's, and Messi's case, it cemented their greatness and put them in a league of their own. Then you can't forget the iconic moments. Iniesta scoring that goal against the Netherlands, Mario Götze etching his name into soccer history after his goal prevented a GOAT candidate from having the perfect World Cup. Along with the other legends I named, your name's gonna be up there with the likes of Franz Beckenbauer, Gianluigi Buffon, Iker Casillas, and Sir Bobby Charlton. But just because a player didn't win the tournament, it doesn't prevent them from being a great. You have the greats like Johan Cruyff, Alfredo Di Stefano, Cristiano Ronaldo, Eusebio, George Best, Paolo Maldini, and Puskas who have never won the World Cup yet had great careers, and some even have GOAT cases. Outside the World Cup, you have other tournaments like the Euro, which is of course Europe's top tournament, and Copa America, South America's premier tournament. These tournaments all have rich history and matchups, such as Argentina and Brazil, Uruguay and Argentina, Italy and Germany, and of course the oldest rivalry in the sport with England versus Scotland. But this Argentina-Mexico matchup, while one-sided, gave us some banger matches in the 2000s. It has nearly 100 years worth of history, with the two teams meeting for the first time in 1930. The two fan bases genuinely dislike each other too. We saw what Mexican teams played in Libertadores, and to be honest, Argentina signifies a hill that the Mexican team cannot overcome. Let's look at Mexico's all-time results versus South American teams. And now it's official FIFA tournaments in the year 1993 onward, showing the divide of Mexico playing in Copa America. The numbers look great, especially when you consider how much weaker CONCACAF is than CONMEBOL in general. So these games were Mexico playing against way better opposition than they were used to. Mexico's all-time results look great except for two, which are against the two giants of the Western Hemisphere. And even then, looking at the results in tournaments since '93, and if you really want to push the numbers to make them look even better, 2000 are surprisingly good. Though if I'm being honest, some of these Mexico wins were against Brazil's B team. Now let's look at the Argentina numbers. No matter how you play with the numbers, Mexico will always have a losing record against the albiceleste. These numbers show that one thing is true and will probably always be true. Argentina is Mexico's kryptonite, especially during knockout matches in the mid-2000s, which happened to coincide with Mexico's peak. But before we get into those matchups, we have to start from the beginning. The first official matchup between these two teams happened in the inaugural World Cup in 1930, hosted by back-to-back world champions Uruguay. Now that begs the question, how can Uruguay be back-to-back world champions when this is the first World Cup? Well, it's simple. FIFA organized the soccer portion of the Olympics for the 1924 and 1928 Olympic Games in Paris and Amsterdam respectively. Going into the World Cup, the two teams couldn't be further from each other if you tried. The Mexican Soccer Federation was barely founded in 1927, only a year before the 1928 games, their first international tournament. As you could expect, this ended terribly for them as they lost 7-1 to Spain in the round of 16, starting a long-standing tradition of never making it past the round of 16 for the tricolor. On the complete other end of the spectrum was the mighty Argentina. Forged by the fire that is now Copa America, Argentina came into this tournament with a mission: to win it all. And unlike Mexico, Argentina had the benefit of actually consistently playing in international competitions. Before this tournament, they featured in all 12 Copa Americas, and they won 4 of them, being back-to-back champions, winning the last 2 tournaments held in 27 and 29 respectively. When you add their 6 second-place finishes in these tournaments, silver medal on the 28 Olympic Games, a win in a one-off tournament called Copa Centenario Revolución de Mayo 1910, which happened to be the first South American international tournament that included more than just Uruguay and Argentina playing each other, something they've been doing since 1905, it's safe to say that Argentina is no stranger in playing in tournaments. The match ended up being played on the 19th of July 1930 in the Estadio Centenario in Montevideo, Uruguay. This would be the final match of the World Cup for Mexico, as they lost to both France and Chile 4-1 and 3-0 respectively. On the other hand, there is Argentina, who had just beat France 1-0 and needed to keep pace from Chile, who had beat both France and Mexico leading up to this game. In proper 𝒐𝒐 fashion, there was already a disconnect in the locker room leading into this game, as there was an issue between the goalkeeper Oscar Bonfiglio and the manager Juan Luque. It all started because of a play that happened in an earlier game, where a ball was shot high enough that the goalkeeper claimed he had lost sight of it in the sun, which caused Luque to reply, "I'm gonna set up a night game for you to see if the moon also bothers you." But let's focus on Bonfiglio for a minute. He had honestly such an interesting life. He conceded the first goal in the World Cup, conceded the most goals in said World Cup, was the first goalkeeper to block a penalty in a World Cup, was the father and also grandfather of prolific Mexican actors, founded the Mexican club 𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒌, and oh yeah, he was a freaking 3-star general for the Mexican military. Sounds like a life too good to be true, right? Because it is. But not because of any of the more outrageous things I said. The first penalty to be blocked in World Cup history was actually blocked by France's Alex Depot, who had blocked a penalty a few hours earlier in the game at the same stadium. But he is the first, and until 2022, only Mexican goalkeeper to block a penalty in a World Cup. While we're talking about first, this game did feature the first penalty to be scored in World Cup history. Mexican midfielder Manuel Chaquetas Rosas scored from the spot. This goal would make Rosas not only the first penalty scorer in World Cup history, but at just 18 years and 93 days, he became the youngest goal scorer in World Cup history. A record he kept for 28 years, only losing it to a young Brazilian player named Pelé, who honestly from the looks of it didn't amount to much. A few days before in their game against Chile, Rosas became the first player to score an own goal in World Cup history. Rosas' list of first won't end there. He ended up scoring another goal against Argentina, being the first Mexican to score 2 goals in the World Cup. A number that only a handful of Mexicans would equal and wouldn't be surpassed until 68 years later, when Luis El Matador Hernández scored 4 goals in the 98 World Cup. Captain in Mexico was a major figure for Mexican soccer. Rafael Récord Garza Gutiérrez, Mexico's first captain, one of the founders for Club América, Mexico's most successful team. Since 1917, Garza was both a player and a manager for the team. Garza was named 𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒌's first manager in 1927 after leading Club América to 4 straight Primera Fuerza championships. He also managed Mexico in an unofficial capacity by managing a team representing Mexico for a series of friendlies a few years before the Mexican Soccer Federation was even founded. Argentina would have to go without their captain, Manuel Ferreira, for this game as he went back to Buenos Aires to take a law exam. A key figure for this team is one of the major icons for Argentine soccer in this time, Guillermo Stabile. Now let's focus on Stabile for a bit. He only played for 4 games for el albiceleste, but man were those 4 games something. And in those 4 games he would score 8 goals. Let's look at this match plotting goals per match versus matches played in the World Cup. This is for the top 25 World Cup goal scorers and some other notable players. All the way on the right is Lionel Messi, averaging half a goal a game in 26 appearances. We see all-time World Cup goal scorer 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌 𝒂𝒄, averaging around that as well. We have legendary goal scorers like CR7, R9, Maradona, Baggio, and others all averaging around a goal every 2 games here. At around 3/4 a goal of a game, we have some legendary goal scorers such as Pelé, Mbappe, Portugal, David Villa, and Harry Kane. The 1 goal game club has Gerd Müller with Gary Lineker at a goal and a quarter each game. At a goal and a half a game, we have a group of 3, with Eusebio and Leonidas being the names that stand out to me. In the 2 goal game club, we have Sandor Kocsis, who was part of Hungary's golden generation, only losing 1 game, a World Cup final, in a span of 6 years. Then we have the striker who has the most goals in a single World Cup, Just Fontaine. In 2003, he was named the best French footballer of the last 50 years. Joining them is 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌. One thing these players all have in common is that they only played 1 tournament. And we have Fontaine being tied for 4th top goal scorer in the World Cup, and Kocsis being tied for 8th. Now let's look at the list of matches played versus goals scored for the same players. I'm not going to go as in depth in this, but all the way on the left is 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌 with the least amount of goals played of all the players on this list, but still averaging around 2 goals a game. The game went how you expect it to go. Absolute domination by the Argentinian team. They had a 3-goal lead by the 17th minute thanks to an early brace by 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌. By the 55th, it was 5-1 when Rosas being the sole goal scorer thanks to his history-making penalty. Goals at 65 and 75 by Rosas and Roberto Carrion made it 5-3, but 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌 shut down any talks of a potential comeback by completing his hat-trick with a goal in the 80th minute. Looking back at this World Cup, we can see that there is a clear gap in level between the 2 teams, one that will be expanded thanks to one of the players' efforts, but not by what he did as a player, but what he did as a manager, as he would help bring in the golden age for the albiceleste. And the craziest part is, I already talked about him. It would take 26 years before the next matchup between these 2 teams in a non-friendly match. In an ambitious attempt to name a true king of the Americas, CONMEBOL and the 2 federations that now make up CONCACAF came together to form the Pan American Football Confederation. They created a tournament called the Pan American Championship, but it didn't last long, only being held between 1952 and 1960. Our old friend from the last game, Guillermo Stabile, is back and now in charge of Argentina as their manager. He's in the middle of leading the team to the total domination of the now Copa America by winning 5 out of the last 7 tournaments the team took part in. Going into the 1956 edition of these games, Mexico still had some catching up to do. The gap in domestic league quality was huge, as just 14 years prior, Mexico's soccer league went pro, establishing a national league. On the other hand, Argentina had a national league since 1891, having the oldest soccer league outside of the UK, and had been pro since 1931, a full 12 years more of being recognized as professionals, and countless of years of playing in the league outside of your own state, as was the case in Mexico, where the national, and I'm using that word loosely, league was located in and around Mexico City, while states such as Jalisco and Veracruz had to compete in their own leagues. In terms of the national team, Mexico weren't in the 1934 or 38 World Cups, but they participated in the Central American and Caribbean Games, where they won gold in back-to-back tournaments in 1935 and 38. In 1938, 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌, for some inexplicable reason, went on a hiatus as a national team in an official capacity until 1947. That year, they would appear in the first North American and Caribbean Championship alongside the US and Cuba. They ended up winning first in that tournament, and it would become the first time, and will become many times, that 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌 would be crowned kings of North America, something they would do again in 1949. Mexico wouldn't appear again on the greatest stage of soccer until Brazil 1950, mostly because the tournament was suspended in 1942 and 46 because of a little-known conflict called World War II. This is another tournament where Mexico finished winless with 3 losses in 3 games and a goal difference of -8. 2 years later, Mexico participated in the Pan American Games, where they finished 5th out of 6 teams. Mexico made another short appearance in the 1954 World Cup in Switzerland, They finished with no points from games against Brazil, Yugoslavia, and France. They would finish in 13th place out of 16 teams with a goal difference of -6. Argentina did participate in the 1934 World Cup but was eliminated in the first game, losing 3-2 to Sweden. However, they did not participate in 38 out of protest as they disliked the fact that Europe hosted 2 World Cups in a row. They dropped out of Brazil in 1950 due to a dispute with the Brazilian Federation. How about Switzerland 1954? And they refused again to make it 3 straight World Cups that they just flat out refused to attend. A player that caught my eye that played during this time period was 𝑬𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒌, one of the best Argentinian right wingers not named Lionel Messi. 𝒂𝒄𝒌 wrote his name in the history books because of stories claiming that he would play games drunk out of his mind. One of his former teammates, Raúl Belén, claimed that 𝒂𝒄𝒌 once showed up so drunk that the team staff had to sober him up. 𝒂𝒄𝒌 would say, "Do not pass me the ball because I cannot see." After being sobered up but still drunk, he would go on the field and score 2 goals. What a freaking legend. This game was played on the 13th of March in the Estadio Universitario. It ended up being a 0-0 draw, and neither team ended up winning the tournament as Brazil took that honor with 9 points, while Argentina was a close second with 7. It would only take 4 years for these 2 teams to meet again. In those 4 years, another World Cup happened, and this time both teams actually participated. 1958 Sweden was Argentina's return to the world stage, but it was a disappointment to say the least. After winning 7 Copa America since their last World Cup appearance, there were high hopes for 𝑬𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒌 to go far in the tournament. And in the group with West Germany, Northern Ireland, and Czechoslovakia, the stage was set for the reigning South American champion. The tournament just ended up being a complete disaster for the Argentines, as they finished last in their group. They finished with only 2 points and 13th out of a possible 16 teams. This is just a failure of epic proportions, and this performance is now called a desastre de Suecia, or the Swedish disaster. To add insult to injury, an estimated 10,000 people were at the airport to greet the players with insults. Argentina wouldn't let this embarrassing failure hold them down. 𝒐𝒏𝒊𝒄 would resign from the manager position in shame after 19 years in charge, but 𝒎𝒏𝒊𝒃𝒍𝒐 would go into the 1959 Copa America with a vengeance, going unbeaten in the tournament and winning all but the last game in dominating fashion. Just for some background information, Copa America in 1959 isn't the same as we know it now. Instead of a group stage from the top 2 teams of each group going on to the knockout stage, this Copa America was a single round-robin format. The title race went into the last day as outside of a draw in their opening match, Brazil, which was led by 18-year-old Pelé, was able to keep pressure all the way until their last game against Argentina on their last match day. With 1 point separating the 2 South American giants, the 2 teams clashed, and with Argentina opened up scoring in the 40th thanks to a goal by Juan José Pizzuti, Pelé gave the Brazilian team hope with an equalizer in the 58th. However, Brazil's legendary team, which also included Zito and Garrincha, and had been crowned world champions the year before, couldn't score another goal, and Argentina redeemed themselves from their 3rd straight Copa America. Now let's focus on Mexico. Mexico's performance in the 58 World Cup didn't deviate from the norm as they finished last, thanks in part to suffering humiliating defeats to Sweden and Hungary 3-0 and 4-0 respectively. Now let's look at this table right here. This table charts the total amount of points that Mexico have earned at World Cups to this point. And it's 0. No points, zilch, nil, whatever you want to say. In 3 World Cups, Mexico has not earned a draw to this point. However, in between blowouts in the 58 World Cup, Mexico was able to come away with a point thanks to 𝒂𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄 Belmonte, who would go on to become el héroe de zona, or the hero of zona. And he would write his name in 𝒐𝒐's history because of his goal in the 89th minute to equalize against Wales. Going into the 1960 Pan American Championship, 𝒐𝒏𝒊𝒄 returned to lead Argentina. It will become the last stands from the team who he dominated South American soccer with. Looking into some stories for this tournament, I found out that there was an International Soccer Hall of Fame located in Pachuca, Mexico. Several players of the Mexican team were inducted into it, but none from this Argentinian team. So I'm pretty sure it was completely not biased at all. Let's focus for a bit on Salvador Chávez Reyes. He would become Chivas' top goal scorer and also featured at a game for them at the age of 71 for 50 seconds as a celebration. Off the bench was another important manager for Mexico, Raúl Cárdenas, who led Mexico to the quarterfinals of the 1970 World Cup, still their furthest to this date. He would also end up leading Cruz Azul to their first 5 titles in 7 years, with 8 final appearances and a treble in 1968 and 69, only 4 years after the promotion to the top flight, the first CONCACAF team in history to do so. As a player, he would end up playing under Ignacio Reyes at Zacatepec from 1954 to 61. He is the most winning person in Mexican soccer history, with 20 trophies as a player and manager. Now let's talk about who was leading Mexico. I mentioned before that Cárdenas was another important manager, so let's talk about the important manager. Ignacio Reyes, one of the best managers in Mexican soccer history. He has won the most official titles in the history of Mexican soccer with 15 as a manager. 7 of those were league titles and 2 international titles, as well as back-to-back championships, which were won when the league only had 1 champion per season, not 2 like now. He would also lead Mexico to their first win in the World Cup, beating Czechoslovakia 3-1 2 years later. He managed Mexico for 106 matches and won 50 of them. Now let's go on to the last tournament played under the Pan American Confederation. This tournament was different from the last because each team would play each other twice. Argentina won the first game 3-2 and the second game 2-0. The first game had Argentina scoring back-to-back goals in the 10th and 11th minutes. Then the Mexicans made it a game by scoring 2 goals 6 minutes apart in the 34th and 40th minute. However, they conceded the game winner in the 78th. Argentina would end up finishing with 9 out of a possible 12 points. And thanks to that 2-0 win against Mexico, Argentina was able to clinch the tournament before the final match day, where they were set to face off against Brazil. It is extremely hard to see how well these 2 teams faced off against each other, as these matches took place 70 years ago. For the 3 Argentina-Mexico games in this video, as well as any other game I talked about, it is extremely hard to find any footage for these games, if any even exists. So I just went off the scores of the games, and that's not a totally accurate way to see how the games actually went. But it did set up one thing: Argentina is on another level compared to Mexico. Between 1937 and 1960, they won 8 Copa Americas and 2 Pan American Championships. Though in the late 50s and early 60s, they would end up losing great players such as Alfredo Di Stefano and Omar Siberori, as well as other key players in positions. It is part of the reason why the 1958 World Cup was such a disaster for Argentina. And soccer-wise, Mexico was still a younger team, as they had that long period where they had no games, as well as just being new on the professional level. You also have to consider the lack of competition in Mexico's region. The most developed country in the region, the United States, didn't really have an interest in the sport. So Mexico has to play against these smaller developing countries that for many socioeconomic reasons don't have enough money, resources, time, or even interest to go into playing soccer. But what would happen if Mexico were to play these more competitive South American teams in a competitive environment, such as a Copa America? These 2 teams would not meet again in an official tournament for 33 years. The matchup would end up being in Copa America 1993. This would be a big year for Copa America, as non-CONMEBOL teams were invited to participate. On top of this, 1993 marked a big change for the tournament: the return of knockout stages. In 1975, CONMEBOL changed the format of the tournament from a round-robin tournament to a group stage with a knockout stage. It's very similar to how many tournaments are played today. However, in 1989, they briefly changed to a format that has a group stage, and instead of a group stage, the winners and runner-ups were put in another group, and whoever had the most points at the end was the cup winner. Thankfully, in 1993, CONMEBOL came to their senses and brought back the knockout stage. At this point in history, Mexico has grown a lot as a national team. Though they were banned from Italy in 1990, Mexico had gone from crashing out constantly from the group stage to making the quarterfinals twice in a 16-year period. And after 1990 and before 2022, Mexico would become a mainstay in the World Cup, always making it past the group stage, but seemingly cursed in the purgatory that is the round of 16, as outside of the 2 World Cups they hosted in 1970 and 86, Mexico has not won a knockout game. And it's not just being outplayed by the better team. 𝒐𝒏𝒄𝒌 always finds a way to give hope to the fans before stomping on their hopes and dreams. Now, when we look at Argentina, it seems as if they changed what tournament they focused on during this time. They went from not doing well at World Cups and dominating Copa America to winning 2 World Cups in 3 attempts between 78 and 86. But they ended up going on a 32-year Copa America drought, going 8 tournaments before they finally won one in 91. Just 7 years prior to this matchup, Argentina had won the 86 World Cup and lost the 1990 World Cup in the final due to a penalty in the 85th minute. They were also on a 25-game unbeaten streak going into the tournament, but they were missing their GOAT, Maradona, who was given a 15-month suspension from all soccer-related activities in April of 91. And although he was able to return in late 92, he wasn't able to return to form. He had an unsuccessful stint with Sevilla and several appearances with Argentina, but nothing major. The team's coveted number 10 was then handed to Atlético Madrid legend and then Sevilla star Diego Simeone. His partner in midfield was Fernando Rendón. In the following year, Rendón would secure a move to Real Madrid where he would become El Príncipe. He would carve out an amazing legacy in 6 years with the team before moving to Milan for the final 4 years of his career. The team was captained by Oscar Ruggeri, a former Real Madrid player who was at the time playing with Club América, but he was a key defender with a nose for goals. And then leading him up front was the legendary Gabriel Batistuta, top goal scorer of the 91 Copa America, who at the time was playing for Fiorentina and would later become Argentina's all-time leading goal scorer before a certain goal would come and surpass him 14 years later. In goal was keeper Sergio Goycoechea. He made his name in the 1990 World Cup where he replaced the then starter Neri Pumpido due to injury. He kept Argentina alive in several games with a clean sheet versus Brazil in the second round and several penalty saves in the quarters and semis. He also nearly blocked the West German penalty in the finals, so that's something at least. He was named second in 𝒐𝒏𝒄𝒌 World's Best Goalkeeper twice, once in 91 and another in 93. He would also be a member of the FIFA 11 in 91 and would go on to win Copa America Player of the Tournament. The team would also have several other FIFA 11 players as well, so this is a completely stacked team. Leading Mexico in goal was the great and always well-dressed Jorge Campos, who stood at a towering 5'5". As flamboyant as a JoJo character, he was considered one of the greatest goalkeepers of his generation and was third in the 𝒐𝒏𝒄𝒌's Best Goalkeeper list in 93. He was also a good goal scorer as well, as he had 34 goals in his career and would play striker several times for his club, including this banger of a goal in 97 where he scored a scissor kick in a game where he started as goalkeeper but was moved to striker due to lack of goals. On the wing was Dr. Luis Garcia, who actually came off the bench for both games versus Argentina but was a player for Atlético de Madrid. These two, along with 𝒐𝒏𝒄𝒌, who also featured in this tournament, make up 3/4 of one of the best commentary teams along with Martinoli for TV Azteca. Leading them up front as captain was the legendary Hugo Sanchez. He had recently returned to Mexico the year before after setting Spain on fire. One of the greatest strikers in Real Madrid and Atlético de Madrid history, but at this point he was well past his prime at 35. This matchup would be the second set of games in the group stage. During the first set of games, Mexico lost to Colombia 2-1, but Argentina beat Bolivia 1-0. This match took place on June 20th, 1993 in el Estadio Jorge Capwell in Guayaquil, Ecuador. The game was pretty even. In the 14th minute, thanks to an impressive run by 𝒐𝒏𝒄𝒌, the subsequent pass led to a foul right outside the box, and while Argentina was getting ready to build the wall, David Patiño was creeping on the right side of the box. Patiño's looking at Hugo Sanchez, makes sure he's onside, and then signals he wants a 3-ball, which Hugo Sanchez obliges him. A good, strong finish, and Mexico opens up the scoring 1-0 in the 15th minute. In the 28th minute, Mexico fails to clear a loose ball in the box. The ball slips through to an open Oscar Ruggeri, who makes it 1-1 with ease. And that's how the game ended, a 1-1 draw. After the next set of games where Mexico drew 0-0 with Bolivia and Argentina drew 1-1 with Colombia, the group was finalized. Argentina will be second behind Colombia, and Mexico barely edges out Bolivia for third place thanks to a tiebreaker for goals for. Argentina had to face a struggling Brazil, a team who qualified to knockouts due to a win in the last match day against Paraguay. This Brazilian squad drew with Peru and lost 3-2 to Chile. In the quarters, Argentina barely edges out Brazil in penalties after drawing 1-1. Everyone was singing the praise for 𝒂𝒄𝒌. His decisive save in the shootout allowed Argentina to win 6-5. In the semis, they had a rematch from Colombia where they drew with the score 0-0. And again winning in penalties 6-5 thanks again to 𝒂𝒄𝒌 saving the ball. With grit and fantastic performances by their goalkeeper, Argentina was in the final. At the end of the group stage, the 3 third-place teams were ranked and the top 2 teams would make it to the knockout stages. The first third-place team was Paraguay with 3 points. Mexico and Venezuela were tied in terms of points for second, but Mexico got the nod due to having a better goal difference with -1, while Venezuela was at -5. You'd think going into the knockout stages that Mexico would just lose to the first team they played, which ended up being Peru, who just won their group. But in the quarters, Mexico would easily go on to defeat Peru 4-2, the 2 goals being allowed after they were already up 4. In the semis, Mexico played the host Ecuador, and thanks to goals from Hugo and the man that was supposed to take the crown as best Mexican player from Hugo, Ramón Ramírez, they won 2-0, getting them into the finals in a dominant fashion. The 2 teams were set to meet in the final. And before we get to that, let's take a minute to look at the Mexican team again. In midfield, you had Ramón Ramírez, who at 23 was believed to be the next great Mexican hope. His partner in the midfield was Chivas legend Benjamín El Maestro Galindo. Also in the middle was the great Alberto García-Aspe. Leading the backline was a 24-year-old Claudio El Emperador Suárez, who would retire as Mexico's all-time leader in caps, a record that won't be broken until 2022. And the matchup would look to be the battle of the strikers, Batistuta and Hugo Sánchez. A legend on his last legs and a man that was well on his way to becoming a legend at the age of 24. The final took place on the 4th of July 1993. It was played in the Estadio Monumental in Guayaquil in front of a crowd of 40,000 people, doubling their last matchup. The game was evenly matched, maybe even favoring Mexico in the early stages. It was high-paced, but in the 63rd minute, Gabriel Batistuta scored the opener for Argentina with a hard strike to the near post to beat Campos. However, 4 minutes later, Benjamín Galindo finds Zague with a beautiful pass as he rounds the keeper. However, he is fouled, leading to a penalty. Now let's take a minute to put things into perspective. This is the biggest match between the 2 teams at this point. Some may even argue that this is the biggest game Mexico had played to this point. It is definitely the top 3 games for me at this point, being out by the 2 quarterfinal games they played in the 70 and 86 World Cup respectively. In front of 40,000 people against the best penalty stopper in the game, Galindo is up to take it. With all the pressure in the world on his shoulders, he's able to send 𝒂𝒄𝒌 the other way to equalize the game. In a sort of poetic justice from the first game, when Mexico caught the Argentinian defense off guard, Simeone finds the Mexican defense off guard off a quick throw-in, and Batigol puts Argentina up for good in the 74th minute with an insane left-footed strike. And just like that, Mexico's Cinderella story ended. A 2nd place finish in their first appearance of the oldest and arguably most competitive and prestigious international tournament not called the World Cup. It's nothing to scoff at. And for Argentina, this would be the last Copa America they win for 28 years until the 2021 Copa America. 1993 was a pivotal moment for this matchup as it showed that Mexico had gone from being the team that was always in the last place positions in World Cups to competing with the big boys of South America. Let's fast forward to about a decade later when Ricardo La Volpe became manager of Mexico at the end of 2002, replacing 𝑻𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌, who had led Mexico to topping their group in the 2002 World Cup before losing in embarrassing fashion to their arch rivals, the US, 2-0 in the round of 16. The hiring of La Volpe would shoot the Mexican national team into a new golden era for Mexican soccer. After winning the 2003 Gold Cup unbeaten and defeating a U23 Brazil team led by Kaká and Robinho in the opening game and in the final 1-0, La Volpe set his sights on a much more prestigious tournament, the 2004 Copa America. After the 1993 second place finish and a disappointing 95 campaign, Mexico will go on to come in 3rd in back-to-back tournaments in 97 and 99, and then a heartbreaking 1-0 loss to Colombia in the finals in 01. Many were asking the question, could La Volpe lead his team to do the unprecedented, by winning the marquee tournament of a confederation they weren't even a part of? It seemed very likely as Mexico was ranked 4th in the FIFA rankings ahead of any tournament member other than Brazil. And while FIFA rankings are inherently flawed since it doesn't rank a team on their current form or overall talent, and instead tries to use math to rationalize a game when the numbers are heavily based on past glory, it's extremely impressive that Mexico was even able to reach those heights. And don't get me wrong, 𝒂𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌 isn't the sole reason for Mexico's high ranking. The high finishes in Copa America, making the round of 16 in the World Cup several times, and winning the '99 Confederations Cup against Brazil of all teams, as well as several Gold Cups were a major factor. Anyway, back to Copa America 2004. Mexico's group was made up of Uruguay, Ecuador, and our old friend Argentina, who featured a young Carlos Tevez, Javier Marchano, and was led by their captain Roberto Ayala, who played at Valencia at the time, Gabriel Heinze, who had just moved from PSG to United a month earlier, and Inter's Javier Zanetti. Leading 𝒂𝒊𝒂𝒂𝒂 was Barça's Rafa Marquez, who had been captaining El Tri since the 2002 World Cup at the ripe age of 23. In goal was Mexican legend Osvaldo Sanchez. The anchor in the midfield was future Bundesliga winner Pavel Pardo, and leading them up front was Javier Borghetti, who scored an absolute banger on Buffon and Maldini's Italy. And while Italy did score an equalizer later in the game, this draw was enough to lead Mexico to top their group. Argentina was managed by the legendary Marcelo Bielsa. One of the most influential managers in the modern era, Bielsa has a coaching tree of over 163 directors and coaches with names such as Diego Simeone, Matias Almeida, Gerardo Martino, Mauricio Pochettino, and Santiago Solari all playing under him. Other notable managers such as former Chile manager Jorge Sampaoli and Pep Guardiola have also credited him for being an influence to them. The game was played in the Estadio Elias Aguirre in Chiclayo, Peru. The two teams faced off in an intense game. In the 8th minute, Mexico has a free kick opportunity on the right side of the box. Lined up to take it on the left-footed side is Chivas star Ramoncito Morales. On the right-footed side is Rafa Marquez. Both of them had the reputation of being set-piece specialists, with Rafa even taking a few free kicks in his stint at Barça instead of Ronaldinho. However, the shot is taken by Ramoncito. The result? This banger of a free kick that curls to the near post, catching the keeper off guard. From there on, the game was hard fought, but Argentina was never able to equalize, though both teams had their chances. With this result and a 2-1 win against Ecuador a few days later, Mexico ended up as the top of the group with 7 points. Argentina secured second thanks to a 4-2 victory against Uruguay. The knockout stage was set and Mexico was flying high. Fate is a cruel mistress though, and as fate would have it, Brazil ended up struggling during the group stages. And thanks to a 2-1 loss to Paraguay during their final group stage game, they ended up in 2nd place. They were set to face Mexico in the quarterfinals. There was no happy ending for Mexico. After finally defeating Argentina in an official FIFA-sanctioned tournament, they were absolutely demolished by Brazil 4-0. For Argentina, the loss to Mexico was a blessing in disguise as they were able to dodge Brazil in the quarters. Instead, they matched up against Peru, who was second in their group. Argentina would go on to win that game 1-0 thanks to a 60th minute goal by Carlos Tevez. In the semis, they would face Group A winners Colombia, where they would easily beat 3-0. In the final, they would face off against Brazil. And in a game for the history books that frankly deserves its own video, the South American Giants would end up drawing 2-2 after full time thanks to a 93rd minute banger by Brazilian striker Adriano. They would go on to penalties where thanks to a combination of heroics by Brazilian keeper Julio César and 𝒂𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒌 kicking the ball to space, Brazil was crowned kings of South America for the 3rd time in 4 tournaments. This would be Argentina's best finish since winning it all in '93. Mexico, on the other hand, couldn't help but feel disappointed by the performance. They crashed out in the quarters after coming into this tournament very highly ranked and finally overcoming Argentina and winning the group only to face the defending world champions. It wouldn't take long for the two teams to meet again, thanks to the 2005 Confederations Cup. The Confederations Cup, if you were unaware, was a tournament that was held the year before the World Cup, usually hosted by the host country for that World Cup cycle. Going into the Confederations Cup 2005, Mexico was ranked 6th in the world while Argentina was ranked 3rd. Only the winners of the confederations, the hosts, and the reigning world champions were invited for the most part, with the exception being if the reigning world champion had also won their respective confederation. And because they won the 2003 Gold Cup, Mexico punched its ticket to the tournament. Since Brazil were the reigning world champions as well as Copa America champions, the 𝒂𝒄𝒄 spot was given to the Copa America runner-up, Argentina. Although it was only a year later, Argentina's team was pretty different as they opted to bring over a much younger squad, with 𝒎𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒌 at 31 being the only over 30. There were only 6 out of 23 overlap players between Copa America 2004 and the Confederations Cup. Mexicano, 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌, 𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒃, and 𝒎𝒂𝒂𝒄 were among those 6. Mexico also opted to bring over a much younger team, with only 2 over 30 players in 𝒂𝒄𝒄 and Osvaldo Sanchez. The overlap between the two were slightly more than Argentina's, as 𝒎𝒃 decided to bring over 10 players from the Copa America squad. Argentina was now led by José Pekerman, who had a very unique way of picking his squad that I'll go into later. Mexico went unbeaten in the group stage after coming from behind to beat Asian Cup winners Japan, and then they got revenge for last year's embarrassing loss in the quarters by beating a strong Brazil team with Ronaldinho, Kaká, Robinho, and a prime Adriano, thanks to a goal in the 59th by 𝒂𝒄𝒄. With the spot in the next round already clinched, they drew with Euro winners Greece 0-0. And then thanks to a goal in the 88th minute by Japanese forward Masai Oguro, Japan was able to earn a draw from the edge of the defeat against Brazil, clinching the first place for Mexico in the process. Argentina was in a group with the host Germany, African Cup of Nations winners Tunisia, and Oceania Nation Cup winners Australia. They beat Tunisia 2-1, Australia 4-2, and edged out a draw with Germany 2-2. They came in second behind Germany due to the latter having a better goal difference by 1. And now it was set, both Mexico and Argentina were set to face each other in the semifinals. It was to be played in the Hanover Stadion on June 26, 2005. The two teams fought hard for 90 minutes with both teams having their fair share of chances. But thanks to poor finishing, some epic goal line finishes, the post getting in the way of a few shots, and of course amazing goalkeeping for both sides, neither team were able to score, and full time ended at a 0-0 draw. 2 red cards were given, 1 for each team. Javier Saviola earned his in the 90th minute for Argentina, getting a straight red on a dirty play on Mexico's Gonzalo Pineda. A few moments later, Rafa Márquez was sent off after earning the second yellow due to a dirty challenge on Pablo Aimar. Mexico's Carlos Salcido put a 3 on top thanks in part to an amazing run, horrid defending from 𝒎𝒂𝒄𝒃 and 𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒃, and the ball bouncing off Federico Coloccini into the goal. Argentina was able to pull level in the 110th minute thanks to Luciano Figueroa, who had a ball fall to him after a Mexican defender blocked a shot. Unmarked in the box for the second time in a span of minutes, El Lucho made up for his last mistake where he had an open goal and kicked the ball right to the Mexican goalkeeper. This time he controlled the ball with an amazing touch and then slid to the ball, ignoring a late reacting Ricardo Osorio, through the legs of Osvaldo Sanchez and barely past the outstretched legs of Carlos Salcido. No team were able to pull ahead for the remaining 10 minutes of the game, and once the clock hit 1:20, the two teams went into a penalty shootout. Both teams took their penalties with great class and elegance, and after each team set up 5 shooters, it was 5-5. The best of which was taken by Mexican midfielder Gonzalo Pineda, who shot 5th for the Mexican side and confidently chipped it past 𝒐𝒏𝒂𝒄𝒃. There's a common saying about how great players rise to the occasion, and so far each player, with the immense pressure that is the hopes of their entire nations, rose to the occasion, but someone had to crack under pressure. To the dismay of a country of 106 million people at the time, the person to crack was Mexican defender Ricardo Osorio. Osorio, as you may remember, was one of the defenders alongside Carlos Salcido that lost track of Lucho Figueroa and allowed him to equalize. With one mistake already in his head, he took a weak penalty that was easily blocked by Lux. Argentina was just 1 penalty away from the final against Brazil. All the pressure rested on Inter's Esteban Cambiaso, and with a confident shot that Osvaldo was nowhere near, Cambiaso rose to the occasion and sent his country to the final. Mexico ended up losing the 3rd place game in a thriller against Germany, 4-3. That one went to extra time as well and was settled by this absolute banger with a free kick by Michael Ballack. It was becoming all too common for the Mexican team to put up these kinds of showings. They went up against top countries and played great, but they always found ways to lose somehow. And then there's this saying, jugar como nunca, perder como siempre. This translates into play like never before, lose like always. There's countless examples that could be in its own video of Mexico playing to the level of their opposite, in some cases even outplaying them for the whole game. But what separates a good team from a great team is the ability to get back up from these setbacks and grind out a result. Current form aside, Mexico is just one of those teams that is seemingly cursed. There's the curse that they can't make it past the round of 16, the curse that after 99 they can't win a major tournament. All those Copa America finishes, their finals appearances, those third places. Countless more examples that cannot be overstated. Argentina ended up being destroyed by Brazil in the finals 4-1. Their second loss to their arch rivals in finals in as many years. As fate will have it, the two teams will meet again in the following year. 2006 was a World Cup year and both teams caught up a mix of players from the last two tournaments. Remember how I said Jose Pekerman had a very unique way of picking the players he caught up? Well, he would look for players that would fit his style and tactics instead of making his tactics fit his players. And while it's a very valid way of choosing the team, there's no excuse to leave legends such as Walter Samuel, Juan Sebastian Verón, and Javier Zanetti off the World Cup list when they're in amazing form and had just led Inter to back-to-back Coppa Italia wins. And thanks to Juventus being involved in a match-fixing scandal, the 2005-2006 Serie A championship. For the most part though, this Argentina team was still extremely strong, with a good mix of experience from players such as Captain Juan Pablo Sorín, who would make the World Cup be his clearing call for the national team, 𝒐𝒐𝒏𝒊𝒃𝒍𝒆, who was just coming off a season where he only appeared in 6 games for Manchester United, as he was injured for most of it, and youth with players such as Corinthians striker and captain Carlos Tevez. Tevez won the award for the best player in the Brazilian league the year before. He scored 31 goals during the 2005 season and 15 goals in 24 appearances during the 2006 season, before he transferred out after the World Cup. Then there's Javier Mascherano, who also played for Corinthians. Like 𝒐𝒏𝒊𝒃𝒍𝒆, he hadn't played much the 2 seasons before thanks to injuries. And then there's probably the most important young player of them all, 18-year-old Barcelona winger, 𝑙𝒓𝒂𝒄𝒌. The 2006 World Cup would be the first major international tournament that the future GOAT would appear in. He was fresh off leading Argentina to a U20 World Cup win in 2005. Back then it was known as the FIFA Youth Championship, but it's the same difference. Messi was a great talent and had promising potential as he became a regular in the Barcelona first team, playing in an attacking trio with legends such as Eto'o and Ronaldinho. This World Cup was the perfect place to become a household name and solidify his place as the young promising talent that would compete for future Ballon d'Ors. Pekerman was not the only manager to make questionable roster decisions. 𝒂𝒊𝒃𝒍𝒆 made the controversial decision not to call up one of Mexico's best players in Cuauhtémoc Blanco. The Club America star was Mexico's best playmaker at the time. He's also considered to be one of the greatest players to put on a Mexico jersey. However, he and 𝒂𝒊𝒃𝒍𝒆 had a feud stretching back to 1996, where the Argentine was in charge of Las Águilas. He made an example out of 𝒂𝒄𝒌 for not conforming to his strict tactics. This escalated in 99, where the Mexicans celebrated a goal against 𝒂𝒊𝒃𝒍𝒆 Atlas by lying down right in front of him. Things were taken to the next level when Blanco opted out of the 2005 Confederations Cup and the 2005 Gold Cup because Jorge Campos, who was then the assistant manager for Mexico, told 𝒂𝒄𝒌 to rest after he won the Liga MX Player of the Tournament that year, and that his place on the team would be safe. Blanco claimed that the two struck up an agreement allowing the then 32-year-old to rest during the summer, but then he was left off the team for the following World Cup qualifiers. This novella-like drama reached its climax when 𝒂𝒊𝒃𝒍𝒆 called up Atlas midfielder Rafael Garcia, who was his son-in-law to the 2006 World Cup, leaving Blanco as the odd man out. This would lead to fan protests which started at an Estadio Azteca and ended at the Mexican Federation headquarters. El Chiquis Garcia will go on to play no games during this World Cup. In the group stage, Argentina faced the Ivory Coast, who they beat 2-1. Completely demolished Serbia and Montenegro 6-0 in a game that's important for a few reasons, but mainly it was Lionel Messi's first appearance in the World Cup. He became the youngest person to represent El Albiceleste at the age of 18 years, 11 months, and 24 days. He also had his recorded first World Cup assist and goal in this game as well, assisting the 4th goal in the 78th minute, 4 minutes after he was subbed on, and scoring the 6th and final goal in the 88th minute, thanks to an assist from Tevez. After clinching a ticket to the knockout stage early, Pekerman decided to rest several players, and as a result, Lionel Messi got his first start in a World Cup game against the Netherlands. The game ended up being a 0-0 draw, and Argentina topped their group thanks to goal difference. There are high expectations on 𝒐𝒃 thanks to their good finishes since the last decade or so. The expectations were even higher as the team were seeded into Pot 1 of the World Cup, meaning that there is no way they could draw top teams such as host Germany, defending champions Brazil, and giants Italy and France. They will go into this tournament ranked the 4th best team in the world, so yeah, it's pretty high expectations. They were drawn into a group of Angola, Iran, and Portugal, who featured another future GOAT candidate, Manchester United's Cristiano Ronaldo. Mexico did what was expected of them by defeating Iran 3-1, but then they lost all-time leading goal scorer and star forward 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌 for the rest of the group stage due to injury. Against Angola, 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌's absence was felt as Mexico weren't able to finish off countless chances and ended up in a 0-0 draw that truly felt like a loss. The result upset many Mexicans and prevented the Mexican team from clinching a knockout stage berth early. Mexico's final stand will be in the 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 Arena located in Gelsenkirchen against group favorite Portugal. Though Mexico did have some early chances, it was Portugal who opened up scoring with a goal in the 6th minute. After that, Mexico struggled to find their footing. In the 22nd minute, another blow hit Mexico as captain Rafa Marquez conceded a penalty off a corner with a silly handball. Portugal's 𝒐𝒐 Sabrosa easily tucked it in for the second goal, and now Mexico was in danger of not making the knockout stages at all. If Mexico couldn't get a goal back, all Angola would have to do is beat Iran by 1 to knock out the Mexicans. But thanks to a goal in the 29th scored by 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂, a buffer was added. But if Angola beat Iran by 2, it will cause the same result of knocking out 𝒐𝒃. Mexico had their chances as the game went on, but a class showing from the goalkeeper Ricardo and poor finishing from La Volpe's side kept Portugal in the lead. The pressure started to rise for the Mexicans as without another goal to tie the game, their hopes rested on the Iran defense, who had conceded 5 goals in their prior 2 games. In the 57th minute, Mexico had a chance to level the game thanks to a handball which led to a penalty. Chivas striker Omar Bravo, who would become Chivas' all-time top goal scorer in 2015, stepped up to take it. The pressure was on. Bravo had the opportunity to secure a spot in the knockout stage and give Mexico the opportunity to win the group and dodge Argentina if another goal was to be scored. But Bravo sent the penalty into the stands, breaking the hearts of Mexicans around the globe. It was not a good game at all for Bravo as he missed several key chances throughout the game, including one shortly after his missed penalty. In the 61st minute, things got worse for Mexico as midfielder 𝒐𝒃𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 was sent off after earning his 2nd yellow for a flop in the penalty box. A few minutes later, things got even worse for Mexico because of news from roughly 450 kilometers away in Leipzig. Angola scored a goal and they were hunting for another. Now Mexico had to hold off Portugal and score down a man or hope that Iran could stay strong and either equalize or not concede another. This was the table going into the final 20 minutes of both games. As the second half went on, Mexico started to dominate the match even though they were down a man, but poor finishing led to a goal not falling. Thankfully for Mexico, Iran was able to equalize in the 75th minute, securing the 2nd place spot for Mexico and a date with Argentina in the round of 16. The stage was set for the next matchup for both teams. On the 24th of July in the Zentralstadion in Leipzig, the two teams played in an official tournament for the 3rd time in 3 years. The sold-out stadium was buzzing as fans from both Latin American countries got ready to see who was going to advance to the next round. Though La Volpe's side struggled a bit in the group stage, this is still widely considered by many to be the best Mexican side ever, and they had to face off against an extremely talented yet familiar Argentina side, who went into the tournament as one of the favorites to win it all. It would be a true test to see if Mexican soccer was ready to take the next step forward. The game was hard fought. In the 6th minute, Pavel Parro sent in a cross from a free kick which found Monterrey defender Mario Mendez flicked it to the far post. The ball landed right at the feet of a streaking Rafa Marquez, who lost 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 inside on his run that started from outside the box. With one touch, the sliding Marquez found the top of the net, and to everyone's surprise, Mexico was leading Argentina. Argentina didn't take long to respond as in the 9th minute there was a corner where they found Hernán Crespo 1v1 with 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂. While 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 did a valiant job defending Crespo, he did end up deflecting the ball into his own net for an Argentina goal. There is some debate about who actually scored the goal. FIFA and Crespo claimed that the goal was Crespo's and that 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂's deflection did little to change the course of the goal. But to many others, this was an own goal by 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂. The game was a battle of the nines as 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 tried his hardest to make up for his own goal, while on the other side, Hernán Crespo was doing the same. Both goalkeepers also carried their weight, making their fair share of saves. And then Tevez and Messi came into the game to give life to a tired Argentina. And it looked like if Argentina was going to come away with a victory, it would be because of one of them. In the 92nd minute, Riquelme found Aymar alone in the penalty box, who laid it off to a trailing Messi for a tap-in. This was a time before VAR though, and the linesman unfairly called offsides on the initial ball to Aymar, who on replay was shown to be kept onside by Gonzalo Pineda. With the goal wrongfully disallowed, the two teams went into extra time, both confident that they could win. 7 minutes into extra time, Sorin switches the play and the ball finds Maxi Rodriguez at the edge of the 18-yard box. Gonzalo Pineda is there marking him, but he doesn't put on pressure, allowing Maxi to control the ball with his chest. Takes a step and waits for the ball to come down. He volleys the ball with his left foot, his non-dominant foot, yet it streaks past the gloves of a diving Osvaldo Sanchez to find the back of the net, killing the hopes and dreams of Mexican fans everywhere. Mexico couldn't score the equalizer and they were left out of the quarters. The saying from earlier rang true again: jugar como nunca, perder como siempre. 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌 side gave one of the games of their careers, going up against one of the tournament favorites, only to have their dreams killed thanks to an amazing goal. Of course, for Mexico fans, there's a lot to be proud about. The team lived up to the moniker of Azteca. They went toe-to-toe with a giant of soccer on the biggest stage and almost pulled off the upset. 17 years later, there are still many questions asked about the team. What if 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌 caught up well? What if 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 didn't get injured and played against Angola and Portugal? What if Bravo scored that penalty? What if Pineda didn't allow Maxi all that space to control and volley the ball? But that's all they are, questions. Nothing could change the past. Mexico's performance in this World Cup will be applauded by many. El Bicotón caught the eye of many, but one person stands out the most. While playing for the Mexican team Dorados de Sinaloa and later as a journalist covering the 2006 World Cup for El País, Pep Guardiola would say that 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌's style was his favorite and even wrote a whole article talking about the way Mexico played. Later as a coach, Guardiola would build off some of 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌's tactics and would revolutionize the game. Pep named 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌 as one of his inspirations because of how Mexico would build up their attack. In that same article, Pep named it after a player and sang his name in praise. It's no other than Ricardo Osorio, the same man who missed a penalty the year prior. He showed so much quality in this game that Pep claimed that he could not only play for Real or Barca, but he could play in any squad in the world if given the chance. Once Mexico went down, he went on the attack and the defender was basically a winger for Mexico, trying to create chances on the right side and threatening the Argentine squad. Argentina will go on to play the quarterfinal against host Germany. Full time ended 1-1 at state level after extra time. Surprisingly, Messi didn't see any field time at all, something that left many scratching their heads, as the belief is that he could have helped at Alibi Celeste, and instead Argentina ended up losing 4-2 in penalties, thanks to the two great saves from keeper Oliver Kahn. This would end up being a disappointment since Argentina went into the tournaments as one of the favorites, and with such a deep and talented squad, many consider this to be one of their greatest teams and should have reached at least the semifinals. After the World Cup, 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌 stepped down from the Mexico job and went back home to manage Argentine giant Boca Juniors. Replacing him was a legend of soccer, Hugo Sanchez. Previously, he was the interim manager in 2000, and after winning back-to-back championships with Pumas and then stepping down after being one of the worst teams in the league that year to being the manager of Necaxa for 7 games where he only won 2 matches and lost 4, he was named 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌's replacement shortly after the World Cup. 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌 and Sanchez had beef too. It stems from when they were both players in the 70s, but it really kicked off when 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌 was manager for Atlante and Hugo Sanchez was a player for him in the 94-95 season. Hugo will compare Atlante to his last team, Rayo Vallecano, to which El Bicotón would say, "How can you compare Atlante with Rayo? You descended with Rayo. We came from being champions of Mexico in the 92-93 season, and the gentleman came after having descended in Spain. He already had been in America and nothing happened. He went to Rayo Vallecano to descend, and he supposedly comes to fix Atlante. For God's sake." Hugo's time as Mexico's manager up to this point has been unsuccessful. In the 2007 Gold Cup, Mexico struggled and ended up losing 2-1 to the United States in the final. But he now sets his sights on the big one, Copa America 2007. Thanks to an injury to starting striker Borghetti, which left him off the 2007 Copa America roster, a new face was made starting striker. a 23-year-old by the name of 𝒐𝒐 Castillo. Playing for the Greek team Olympiacos, 𝒐𝒐 had a hard time deciding what national team he wanted to play for. He was eligible for the place of his birth, Mexico, for the place where his father is from and where he lived until the age of 16, Uruguay, for the place from where his grandparents were born, Italy, and finally the place where he had resided since 2000, Greece. Greece had reportedly offered to give 𝒐𝒐 $800,000 and fast-track citizenship, but ultimately he picked Mexico. Prior to this tournament, Castillo was the subject of controversy, as in his last game for the Greek side, he stole a free kick from a player from his own team, sneaking up from behind and shooting it. He did score, but that's not something you could do. Returning to the national team was 𝒂𝒄𝒌 𝒂𝒄, who had just become one of the highest paid MLS players thanks to his move to the Chicago Fire in April of that year. Argentina was now led by 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒂. He had previously led Argentina from 91 to 94 and was the manager for the last Copa America win in 93. Messi was coming off a breakout year where he would have 17 goals and 36 appearances. His good form would continue for the rest of 2007, earning him 3rd place in Ballon d'Or and 2nd place in FIFA World Player of the Year at the age of 20. Mexico opened up their group stage with a 2-0 win over defending champions Brazil, and 𝒐𝒐 Castillo started his Mexico career strong with a goal in this game. And you know what? Let's watch this goal. It's just too much of a banger to skip.
Allá va Israel Castro, segmento del juego, cortesía de Verizon Wireless, juega Cacho para adelante, ¡Neri! ¡La gran jugada! ¡Golazo!
Man, what a... The second was also this banger by Ramoncito Morales.
También está Alex y Rodriño. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 en la barrera y Torrado que estorba. Atento Doni. El cancerbero brasileño le pega a Ramón. ¡Golazo!
Mexico would then beat Ecuador 2-1 with goals from 𝒐𝒐 Castillo again and Omar Bravo. Next was a 0-0 draw with Chile. The results were enough to earn them 1st place in their group. Argentina opened up their group stage with a 4-1 dismantling of the US, a 4-2 win over Colombia, and finally a 1-0 win over Paraguay. They also clinched 1st, and the two teams could potentially meet in the semifinals if they could both win the quarterfinal games. In the quarters, Mexico demolished Paraguay 6-0 thanks to a great showing from 𝒐𝒐 Castillo. He scored 2 goals and earned a foul that gave the Paraguayan goalkeeper a red card. This was all within the first 6 minutes, and he completed his hat-trick in the 39th. The goals in that game were just banger after banger from Mexico, who punched their ticket to the semis with this dominant performance. Argentina, not to be outdone, beat Peru 4-0 with all 4 goals being scored in the second half. The entire team played great, but as always, Messi had moments where he was just a magician with the ball, and his performance was topped off by a beautiful goal that megged the keeper. Both teams topped their group. They were unbeaten and they were coming off blowouts in the quarters. They were set to meet in the semis now. And so is it, the two teams met again for the 4th year in a row. Mexico looked to keep up the good performance streak against Argentina and make it to another Copa America final. Argentina was looking to end an old era and start the new one with a bang. You had the young talent in Tevez, Messi, and Mascherano, and they were becoming focal points in the team, while players such as Juan Verón, Roberto Ayala, and Hernán Crespo were looking to end their 13-year Copa America drought. The game was pretty even at first. There was some back and forth between the two teams, and it wasn't the best soccer as both teams were missing clear opportunities and made easy mistakes. But it was played at an entertaining pace, with loads of chances for both teams. As the first half was winding down, it felt like the two teams were going to go into the break level. That was until Argentina was given a free kick in the 44th minute. Even though the ball was set around 40 yards from the goal, all eyes were looking at Riquelme to challenge Osvaldo and shoot at goal. Instead, Riquelme sends a beautiful chip to the back post to find a shrieking 𝒐𝒐, who slipped by 3 Mexican defenders unmarked and catches Osvaldo in no man's land. 𝒐𝒐 would slip the ball past Osvaldo on his first touch. A killer blow for 𝒐𝒐, who had their own fair share of chances but couldn't convert. In the early moments of the second half, Mexico did have chances to level, none better than in the 54th minute with this amazing play from 𝒐𝒐 Castillo, who makes a perfect run between 2 defenders, and coupled with a beautiful ball from Rafa Marquez. Neri finds himself one-on-one with the goalkeeper. 𝒂𝒐𝒅 controls the ball and tries to loft it over the keeper, but he barely misjudges the height and hits the crossbar. Mexico's best chance squandered by only a few inches. Argentina would then go on to increase their lead by 1 thanks to a beautiful play by Messi. He's wide open on the right side of the field and then chips it over Osvaldo, who was off his line. From then on, Argentina dominating and crushed Mexico, controlling the pace of the game with their possession. 3 minutes later, Argentina was awarded a penalty thanks to a foul on Karl's Tevez by Marquez. Riquelme steps up to take it and then easily scores a goal for 𝒂𝒄𝒌, all but confirming Argentina's date with Brazil in the finals. Nothing really happened for the rest of the game, though there were some chances here and there, but overall it was just Argentina dominating the game until the clock struck 90 and the ref blew the whistle to end the game. Just like that, a great tournament came to an end for 𝒐𝒐, losing 3-0. Sure, this loss didn't sting like the last 2 for fans, but in many ways, this one hurts more. Only a year from an amazing showing by the Mexican team on the heels of a great tournament, where they were a firm belief that they could shock the world by winning the entire thing, they were humiliated by a familiar foe that had prevented them from reaching glory several times before. But this time it was even more embarrassing than previous years. It's one thing to fight your heart out and at some points even outclass a superior opponent, but it's another to allow yourself to be walked over and lose without a whimper. Did Mexico have their chances? Yeah, but overall their final performance left much to be desired after the amazing performances that 𝒐𝒐 had in recent years. Oh wait, did I say Mexico's tournament was over? They played the 3rd place game against Uruguay, coming back from a 1-0 deficit to win 3-1, thanks to a penalty from Cuauhtémoc and bangers from Omar Bravo and Andrés Guardado. For the 2nd time in a row, Argentina lost to Brazil in the finals, being humiliated 3-0 by their arch rivals thanks to a beautiful goal from Julio Bautista, an impressive own goal from Roberto Ayala, and a nice finish from Dani Alves. And overall, just a disappointing end for el albiceleste. After 4 years of consecutively playing each other in major tournaments, Argentina and Mexico didn't meet in 2008 and 2009. But they did meet in 2010 during the World Cup hosted by South Africa. After failing to qualify for the Olympics and struggling during the World Cup qualifiers, Hugo was replaced by 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 replaced as the country's goalkeeper after he was seen begging a Honduran player to not score another goal because there was no way for Mexico to come back while down 1-0. Naturally, his replacement would be 24-year-old 𝑻𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌, who had been considered Mexico's best goalkeeper. Wait, the starting spot was given to 37-year-old 𝒎𝒂𝒄𝒌. Well, age was catching up to Karl, who would retire later that year. Nery Castillo was set to lead Mexico up front. Oh, he had behavioral problems and was perceived as a locker room cancer. After a shoulder injury and the death of his parents, he was just a shell of himself just 3 years prior. He didn't even make the 23-man list for the World Cup. At least Mexico still had new Manchester United signing Chicharito Hernández, who just came off a breakout season at Chivas and had scored 8 goals in just 5 games to start the season. After missing 5 games from injuries, he ended the season as Liga MX's joint top goal scorer with 10 goals in 11 appearances. And 𝒿guerre decided to start free agent Guille Franco, who was released by West Ham in May and was in terrible form, only scoring 5 goals in 23 appearances. He wouldn't go on to sign a contract with another team until January of 2011. Well, at least the reins of the team was handed to the young, golden generation of Mexican talent that had just won the Under-17 World Cup, with talents such as Carlos Vela, Giovanni Dos Santos, and Héctor Moreno. The team was rounded off with the experience of players like Rafa Márquez, Gerardo Torrado, and of course a 37-year-old Cuauhtémoc Blanco, who was playing in Mexico's second division at the time. Oh yeah, and our good friend Ricardo Osorio is back. He's in the middle of a great redemption arc after missing that penalty. He, along with his fellow Mexican teammate Pavel Parro, even won the Bundesliga with Stuttgart in 2007. Argentina now had a 22-year-old Messi, who for lack of better words was well into his journey into becoming one of the GOATs. Having just won the Ballon d'Or in 2009 and led Barca to a sextuple with 6 top championships, he was considered one of the best in the world. They also had Ángel Di María, who would sign with Real Madrid during the tournament, Gonzalo Higuaín at forward, who was also at Real, 𝒂𝒂, who was now at his prime at 26 and now at Manchester City, the 22-year-old Agüero who played with Atlético Madrid, and they were captained by Javier Mascherano. They had a deep squad on paper and they were led by their legend, Diego Maradona. They struggled in qualifying and didn't secure their spot in the World Cup until they beat Uruguay 1-0 in their last qualifying match. But with such a deep squad attacking-wise, they were still among the favorites to win the World Cup. Mexico drew host South Africa, Uruguay, and 2006 runner-up France. In the opening match of the World Cup, they faced South Africa. After going down 1-0 in the 55th minute, Rafa Márquez was able to put it even in the 79th. Mexico's next game was against France, and they won 2-0 with goals from Chicharito and 𝒂𝒄𝒌, which was a penalty. Their third and final match to see who was going to top the table was against Uruguay. They lost 1-0 with a goal from Luis Suarez in the 43rd. With South Africa only beating France 2-1, Mexico was able to clinch second via goal difference. Argentina beat Nigeria 1-0 with a goal from 𝒂𝒂𝒂 at the 6th minute. They beat South Korea 4-1 with an own goal and a hat-trick from Higuaín. Versus Greece, they won 2-0 with goals from 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 and Palmero at 77 and 89 respectively. Argentina will go on to top their group. On the 27th of June at Soccer City in Johannesburg, Mexico faced Argentina in front of 84,000 people. Surprisingly, 𝒂𝒂𝒄 started one of my favorite players in 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 to a start because of how well he played against Argentine teams in Copa Libertadores 4 years prior. In the positive, 𝒐𝒂𝒄 also did give Chicharito his first start at the World Cup. It was a back and forth game at first, but that all changed when 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒌 scored a goal in the 26th minute where he was miles offside. Mexico argued with the refs and replays showed that he was offside. But since there was no VAR, the call could not be overturned. Then the dagger struck. In the 33rd minute, Higuaín scored a goal off a mistake from my old friend Ricardo Osorio. He passed the ball directly to Higuaín, who would score, putting 𝒖𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 up 2-0. You can't help but feel bad for Osorio. He was such a great player, and people make mistakes all the time and bounce back. Hell, he did it 5 years earlier after that Confederations Cup game. But something about making a huge error at that point of your career at that stage is a legacy killer. He had just turned 30 that March. Not ancient, but it's a lot less time to make a comeback than at 25 like he was at 2005. While the team supported him, he would go on to cry after the game. In the years after, he is constantly asked about his mistake, even going on record, half joking, asking the entire country of Mexico for forgiveness. And it's not like his career after this was over. He would go on to return to Mexico playing for Monterrey and be part of a team firing on all cylinders and become an undisputed starter for that team. He'd go on to win the Liga MX title and 3 CONCACAF Champions Leagues with the team before his retirement in 2016. However, this game would basically be the end for his time with the national team. He would feature in 2 more games for Mexico in some friendlies in 2011, but not play a full 90 in either. It's easy to remember the mistakes of someone that isn't you, and it's even easier to not acknowledge the accomplishments of others that have made mistakes. So for the last picture of someone who was a key figure for these games, I leave this. Osorio after winning the Bundesliga, his biggest accomplishment where he was on top of the world. Let's get back to the game. 𝒂𝒏𝒄𝒌 scored again in the 52nd with a banger, all but clinching the win for Argentina and setting them up with a date in the quarterfinals with Germany. And though the game was well out of reach, Chicharito got one back with a banger at the 71st. The offside goal call is believed to be the reason why Italian ref Roberto Rossetti was left off the list of the 19 refs who will continue reffing, and shortly after he announced his retirement as a ref. Mexico failed to reach the goal of reaching el quinto partido, or the quarterfinals again, and Argentina went on to the quarters to play Germany, and got destroyed 4-0. Argentina again underperformed in the World Cup that they went into as favorite. After the tournament, 𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒌 promptly resigned, and Maradona's contract was not renewed. It would take 12 years for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar for Mexico and Argentina to meet again. This tournament was hosted in the winter, so it was on the 26th of November in their second group stage game. Argentina was led by Lionel Scaloni, who led them to a 2021 Copa America title, their first since '93. Out of all the teams going into the World Cup, Argentina is in the best form, being on an unbeaten streak of 35 and just 2 shy of the all-time international record of 37, with the last loss being against Brazil in the 2019 Copa America. If Argentina is able to keep the streak alive by either beating or drawing against Saudi Arabia, they had a chance to make history against Mexico of all teams. With a qualifying record of 11 wins and 6 draws, they were able to earn second in 𝒂𝒄𝒌 qualifying, only behind Brazil. While Argentina was flying high, Mexico was in terrible form. Though they ended CONCACAF World Cup qualifying equal on points with Canada, they ended up second because of goal difference. Not bad, but the team just looked outright terrible at times. Mexico was headed by former Argentina and Barcelona manager Gerardo el Tata Martino, and boy has his reign been extremely controversial. After losing to the United States in 2 straight finals, fans were calling for his head, but the Mexican Federation stuck to the guns. The result of this? Just absolute terrible results. For example, a 2-3 loss to Colombia in a friendly where Mexico blew a 2-0 lead in the second half, and a 3-0 thrashing to Uruguay in another friendly amongst terrible performances against other CONCACAF teams. Now, Tata isn't to blame for all the performance issues. In fact, he might just be a scapegoat, but Mexican soccer is from top down just an absolute mess, which is honestly enough for its own video. Yeah, that's something I said a lot in this series, but that holds true. Youth development in Mexico has gone down substantially. It's to the point that 22-year-olds are considered to be young talents that lack experience to become first-team players in Mexico's top flight. There's just a lack of competition with 𝒂𝒄𝒌 teams, as Mexico and Mexican teams are no longer playing prestigious and competitive tournaments like Copa America, Copa Libertadores, and Copa Sudamericana, though Tata's questionable tactics and decisions have been an issue. Argentina will of course be led by the great Lionel Messi, a GOAT in his twilight years. Messi is him and enters his 5th and what he claims to be last World Cup with a mission to bring the World Cup back to Argentina. The little boy from Rosario goes into the World Cup just 1 trophy away from completing football, as his trophy cabinet is full with 7 Ballon d'Ors, 4 Champions Leagues, a Copa America and Olympic gold, 10 La Ligas, 7 Copa del Reys, 6 European Golden Boots, and to this point 1 World Cup Golden Ball. In goal for el albiceleste is Emiliano El Dibu Martinez. The Villa keeper left Argentina at 17 to join Arsenal and has not looked back. He's the son of a trucker and a housekeeper. Dibu came from nothing to become one of the greatest heroes of the World Cup with clutch save after clutch save. His story includes having to sleep in the kitchen with his brother since they didn't have enough room, and when food was short, his parents wouldn't eat so he and his brother could, among other things. In 2014, at a family barbecue, he would watch Argentina lose in the final to Germany. He was on loan at Sheffield Wednesday in the 2nd division of English soccer. In 2018, he watched as a spectator in the stands after Argentina lost a heartbreaker to France in the round of 16. And apparently, he told his brother next to him that he'll go to Qatar as a player and not a fan. Fast forward to 2022, and he's a starting goalkeeper who has earned his stripes. Alongside Messi in attack will be Julián Álvarez. At 22 years old, he's the scorer of some pretty important goals for Argentina. Currently a backup for Man City since they have one of the most dominant strikers in Europe right now, but that doesn't mean he's not talented and he used the World Cup to rise into stardom. He has some insane accolades in South America. He broke a 121-year-old record for River Plate by scoring an insane 6 goals versus Peru's Alianza Peru in the Libertadores match. This match also happened to be the first time he scores a hat-trick. He was on Real Madrid's radar since he was 11, having a trial with Los Merengues, but he couldn't sign with the team because of Madrid's policy that states that foreign talent must be at least 13 years old before they could sign with the academy. He won almost everything he could win with River, leaving Argentina with a Libertadores, a Copa Argentina, and a Primera División, while internationally winning a Copa America, all before the age of 21. Then there's Ángel Di María. If it wasn't for Messi, we'd be talking about how Argentina was being led by him. One of the greatest talents of his generation, El Fideo has been Messi's right-hand man for years. The scorer of the goal that gave Argentina their first Copa America in 28 years with his goal versus Brazil in the 2021 Copa America final. The other boy from Rosario, he's a big-time player for the team, and when you talk about Argentina over the last 15 years, he'll probably be the second person you think of. He's the winner of a U20 World Cup. He's the scorer of the goal that gave Argentina an Olympic gold medal. He helped lead Real Madrid to their 10th Champions League with a run that led to Bale's goal that gave Madrid the lead in the 110th minute, which won him man of the match. You could just say he's him. For Mexico, the squad is very weak, with some controversial players being caught up over players that many felt like are in better form or more deserving. And before I get into that, let me introduce some key players for Mexico. 𝑻𝒂𝒄𝒌 is on the roster for his 5th World Cup, though he didn't make an appearance in 2006 and 2010. The goalkeeper has become the World Cup keeper, with his historic performance after historic performance on the world's biggest stage. And while these performances don't really translate to better career moves, it seems like every 4 years he just spawns in Mexico's goal as its protector. The midfield anchor is Edson Álvarez. He was linked with a move to Chelsea over that summer, but because Ajax had lost so many key players, he wasn't allowed to move. Edson is next in line to take Mexico's captain's armband and is considered by many to be their best player. Up front, leading the attack is Edwin El Chucky Lozano. The Napoli man is the scorer of the goal that gave hope to Mexico in their victory over Germany in the 2018 World Cup. And while injuries have stopped his growth as a player, he will be where a bulk of Mexico's attack come from. And then there's 𝑬𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒌 𝑰𝒏𝒇𝒐, who will most likely be taking a role like Rafa Márquez took in 2018 and Cuauhtémoc did in 2010. An experienced leader that, while not being able to play many minutes, can play some big minutes if needed. Starting striker is going to be Henry Martin, but also on this roster is forward Raúl Jiménez, a controversial pick from El Tata. He was a beast at his peak with Wolves, having seasons of 17 goals and 8 assists in 2018 and 2019, and 27 goals and 10 assists in 2019 and 2020. Though a freak injury where he cracked his skull almost ended his career, and according to what doctors told him, his life. After his return from injury, he's been the shell of his former self, and understandably so considering his injury. His spot in the World Cup squad was at risk thanks to a combination of bad form and a groin injury that he got in August of 2022, causing him to be out until a week before the World Cup, where he played for Mexico versus Sweden. A move that caused many to question his ability to play after being shown struggling to lift his own leg during warm-ups. But somehow he was healthy enough to earn a spot in Tata's eyes over the likes of Santiago Jimenez and to many even Chicharito. Speaking of those two, let me get into those not caught up by Tata that left many people questioning his squad selection. There is Santiago El Bebote Jimenez, an Argentina-born striker who was raised in Mexico and the son of former Liga MX and former Mexican national Cristian El Chaco Jimenez. Going into the tournament, he's Mexico's most informed striker, scoring 5 goals in 5 matches in Liga MX with Cruz Azul before he moved to Dutch club Feyenoord, where he scored 6 more goals coming off the bench. 2 goals in 12 appearances, though only 442 minutes in the Dutch league, while also netting 4 goals in 6 appearances only in 173 minutes in the Europa League. Enough to become the competition's top goal scorer. He was left off because apparently he didn't do enough to challenge the hierarchy of a national team that included 2 players that spent most of the months leading up to the tournament injured. And then there's El Chicharito Hernández, the Mexican legend and the top goal scorer for Mexico's men's national team. The former Manchester United and Real Madrid striker is spending the tail end of his career in the MLS with the LA Galaxy. But he is in form for the club, scoring 18 goals in the 22 season and 17 the season before. But even with Mexico's striker problem going into the World Cup, it is reported that behavior issues have kept El Chicharito from being caught up over a majority of El Tata's tenure, even in 2021 when he was 𝒐𝒐's only informed striker. Then there's El Tecatito Corona, Mexico's most creative dribbler, had to miss the World Cup at his peak thanks to an ankle injury that he got in August, though that didn't stop El Tata from naming him to his 31-man list and trying to take him to the World Cup if it wasn't for Sevilla coming in and putting their foot down. And then there's the one that they sarcastically called the Mexican Messi, Diego Lainez. He has been suffering from a lack of game time after moving to the old world with lack of minutes in Real Betis and Braga. And while hindsight shows that he didn't live up to expectations at the time, he always seems to bring the magic when he plays off the bench for Mexico. And thanks to El Tecatito's injury, he could have fulfilled the creative winger role, but the lack of minutes did understandably leave him off the squad. Though many will argue that he is better or offers more than both Uriel Antuna and El Piojo Alvarado. One thing is for sure, this isn't Mexico of old. La Volpe is no longer chain-smoking on the sidelines, and many fans come into this World Cup with zero hope as his team is a shell of its former self. This matchup wouldn't happen until the second match day, so both teams had gains before to help set up the match. The first match ended up being Argentina versus Saudi Arabia to open up group play. Many people expected this to be an easy win for Argentina and expected the unbeaten streak to go on for another game. Early on, it looked like clear sailing for El Albiceleste as they dominated early, and thanks to an early penalty in the 10th minute, Argentina looked set to coast to the win. Especially when the plays that were happening. For example, in the 22nd minute, a streaking Messi was found with a ball over the top by Papu Gomez. Messi calmly passes it past the goalkeeper to double Argentina's lead, but a late offside call from the linesman nullifies the goal. The replay shows an extremely close call. A few minutes later, Gomez plays another beautiful through ball, but this time to Lautaro Martinez, who chips the ball right over the keeper. But after a VAR review, the call was overturned as Lautaro is just a hair offsides. In the 34th minute, Messi plays the ball to Lautaro, who scores again. But as you probably guessed it, the goal was called offsides again, but this time it was clear. Argentina's hold on the game started to loosen after the first half, and in the 47th minute, Saudi Arabian midfielder 𝒓𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌 plays a beautiful ball to winger Ferraz Al-Brincan, who brings the ball down and leaves it for striker Salim Al-Shaheri, who blows past Romero and slots it past 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄𝒌 to equalize the game. Argentina was shell-shocked and their play deteriorated, and in the 52nd minute, magic happened. Saudi Arabian right back Abdulhamid beats 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒂𝒄 on a one-on-one and sends a cross into the box, which is hit away by Otamendi. But the ball stays in the box and finds midfielder Al-Abid, who sends a left-footed shot that looks like it would have found the back of a net, but Romero heads the ball away, which sends the ball high in the air where winger Salim Al-Dasawi gets under it and controls it. He fights off pressure from Nahuel Molina and a challenge from Angel Di Maria before taking De Paul's hips and sending a right-footed screamer before a sliding Paredes could reach him. The result? An absolute banger of a goal that screams past 𝒐𝒊𝒂𝒄 and puts Saudi Arabia in the league. From there, a desperate Argentina tries to equalize the game, creating chance after chance all the way into the end, but none of them could find the back of the net. And just like that, the first big upset of the World Cup full of upsets happened. Argentina falls just one game short of equalizing Italy's unbeaten streak. Mexico opened up their campaign by facing a Polish team led by one of the best forwards of his generation, Robert Lewandowski. The game was honestly pretty boring, with Mexico dominating possession but not being able to do anything with the ball, only mindlessly sending cross after cross with no one able to finish it. In the 4th minute, Chivas winger and Mexico's 10, Alexis Vega, missed a clear chance after a tricky cross finds him back post, but he loses the ball in the air and completely whiffs it. Then again, in the 25th, Vega misses another clear chance after a good cross from Héctor Herrera finds him, but he couldn't head it in. The story of the game was just that, some chances, but no one there to finish it. Then, in the 52nd minute, disaster struck for Mexico, when an Edson Alvarez mistake leads to a Lewandowski 3-on-1 situation that ended with the Barca man and Monterrey defender Hector Moreno in a grappling match. This holds up Lewandowski just enough for Ochoa to come out and cut Lewandowski off, allowing for Mexico to clear the ball. Play continued for a bit, but the next time the ball went out, there was a VAR review. A penalty is called and the hearts of Mexico fans everywhere dropped. A loss to Poland would surely leave Mexico eliminated. Many fans expected a loss to Argentina, and Saudi Arabia's upset win had the most pessimistic of Mexico fans thinking that this Mexican team was going to end up with 0 points. Mexico's hero of the last 2 World Cups didn't leave much hope for the 3 fans either. The joke is that World Cup Memo is the greatest goalkeeper of all time. However, no amount of World Cup shenanigans could allow Mexico fans to think that he could block a penalty from one of the greatest penalty kick takers in recent memory. Lewandowski's made 71 out of 79 penalties in his career. For as good as a shot blocker that Memo is, he has 2 clear weaknesses: knowing when to come off his line and penalties. This is a chart of every single penalty that Memo has faced, penalty shootouts included. His save rate is just terrible. He's only blocked 19, or about 15.6% of all penalties that he's faced. If we add the 7 times the shooter just flat out missed, the percentage comes out to about 21%, which is still below the average by about 3%. Going into the tournament and counting shootouts, he's only blocked 1 out of the last 28 penalties, while Lewandowski has not missed a penalty for Poland since 2010. And now let me add the penalty to the chart. Yeah, Memo added to his World Cup legend by adding a penalty block against a world-class penalty taker to keep Mexico level. This is the first time a Mexican has blocked a penalty from Mexico since 1930, when Oscar Bonfiglio did. Nothing else really happened during the rest of the game, and it finished level with both teams reluctantly taking a point. To many Mexico fans, this felt like a loss, as many felt like Mexico didn't take advantage of Argentina's loss, and a win would have put ℒ3 in the driver's seat for first in the group. This would have given Mexico a chance to bypass France in the round of 16, as many expected them to win their group. Going into match day 2, this is how the group table looked. Before the Argentina-Mexico matchup, Saudi Arabia and Poland faced off against each other at Education City Stadium, a game that Argentina desperately needed to be a draw or Saudi Arabia win, or else a Mexico upset could leave Argentina eliminated. And then this happened. Goals by Poland in the 39th and 82nd gave Poland a 2-0 win. The absolute worst case scenario for Argentina had happened. For Mexico, a win would be legendary. 𝒐𝒐's sins would be forgiven, and if Argentinian-born striker Rogelio Funes Mori scored the winning goal, he would have a statue built to him next to el Ángel de Independencia. Okay, I'm obviously exaggerating, but being the reason one of the GOATs' last dance is cut short would obviously be a huge accomplishment. The game was played a few hours after the Poland-Saudi Arabia match at the Lusail Stadium with an attendance of 88,966, making it the 8th most attended game in World Cup history. Argentina struck with their 4-4-2 with lots of changes in personnel. The front two of Lautaro playing as the 9 and Messi playing behind him stayed the same. Eze Di Maria on the right wing and De Paul as a 6. But Leandro Paredes was replaced by former America star Guido Rodriguez, and Alexis McAllister replaces Papu Gomez on the left flank. The back line was where most of the changes were made, as Otamendi was the only person to stay from the last game, with Molina, Romero, and Tagliafico being replaced by Montiel, Lisandro Martinez, and Marcos Acuña. A drastic change with many players being carried over from Argentina's 4-0 win in a friendly against Mexico in 2019. Mexico did even more drastic changes. They switched from Tata's trusty 4-3-3 formation, when he used some sort of similar variant in all but 7 of his 64 games as manager for El Tri, opting instead to go to a 5-3-2, as if he was channeling his inner La Volpe. However, unlike La Volpe, Tata's 5-3-2 was toothless, choosing to shockingly start the game with no true striker, instead opting to use wingers Edwin Lozano and Alexis Vega as strikers. The decisions in the mid were no less baffling. Tata opted to start 32-year-old Héctor Herrera, who has been struggling after his move to MLS side Houston Dynamo and has been in the worst form of his life. Alongside him was Betis player and Mexico's captain Andrés Guardado, who at 36 had his best soccer behind him and struggles to play a whole game at a high level given his mileage. Given the experience, it was one thing to start one or the other, but to start both of them like it was 2016 is just shooting yourself in the foot. Alongside them was World Cup standout Luis Chávez. This left Mexico's best midfielder and arguably best player in Edson Álvarez on the bench. The backline had Kelvin Alvarez at right wing back. He was making his World Cup debut. Néstor Araujo, who is considered by many to be a weak link, as since 2016 there has been 11 times where Mexico has allowed 3 or more goals, and Néstor Araujo played a full 90 in 8 of them. And no matter how well he plays for his club, his form never translates to the national team. Then there's César Montes, who earned a move to Spain's Espanyol. The other center back spot is 34-year-old Héctor Moreno, and then Jesus Gallardo is at the left wing back position. Let's go back and take a look at Andrés Guardado. Mexico's captain has played a huge part of these games versus Argentina since 2006. He started and made his World Cup debut in that infamous round of 16 game as a young 19-year-old, just 1 month shy of his 20th birthday. He played out of his mind, being disrupted, offering good energy, and forcing mistakes, but he had to be subbed off because of an injury in the 67th minute. But the question coming into the game was, do he and Herrera, the team that have led Mexico for years, have enough in the tank for one last hurrah against one of the greatest teams in the world, and the tournament favorites led by a legend on a mission to conquer his final peak? The game started with some back and forth between the two teams, reminiscent of that 2010 meeting. However, as the game went on, it started looking less and less like those matches from the 2000s. Mexico was just sitting back and waiting for an Argentinian mistake before they would attack. It became clear they weren't playing for the win, they were playing not to lose. Though in the first half, Mexico did a great job in pressuring and limiting options. De Paul was their target of choice, pressuring him hard and early, causing several turnovers that led to some serious chances. Guardado in particular was a big force behind the pressure. It's as if he turned the clock back to 2006 and was causing all sorts of havoc with his defensive pressure, winning possession after possession and disrupting Argentina. In the 9th minute, Mexico had the first big chance of the game with a free kick from about 45 yards out. It was sent to the front post by Luis Chavez. Montes is able to get there and just get his foot on the ball to send it to the back post, where an open Héctor Moreno was too slow to reach it. The midfield battle will last deep into the first half, as neither team would register a shot until the 40th minute, where a quickly played Argentina corner leads to a cross from Di Maria to Lautaro, who beats Cesar Montes to the ball, but it sails way over. The first half ends with neither team having a shot on target. Before the corner, bad news struck Mexico as Andrés Guardado starts to limp on the field. He quickly asks for the sub. He limps off the field to a standing ovation in a stadium with over 80,000 spectators. His face only showed frustration as he couldn't finish the first half of such a pivotal game. 5 World Cup call-ups, 179 appearances in the tricolor, most for the Mexican national team, and 10th all-time on the Mexican scoring list. His resume speaks for itself as he is one of the best players to ever put on a Mexico jersey. In what was believed to be his last game wearing a tricolor, he gave it his all and did what he was asked to do. And though he did get some minutes in a friendly against the USA in a 2-0 win in 2024 as a goodbye to the national team, this moment forever will be his last minutes of meaningful soccer for the tricolor. He would end up retiring in 2024 after a return to Mexico, but man was his career great, one being a top 5 Mexican player of all time. This just in while editing this video, Leon and Guardado have announced that he's coming back for 6 more months so that he could play the Club World Cup alongside James Rodriguez. The question on everyone's mind was, can his midfield partners of Herrera and Chavez alongside his replacement keep up the intensity and same pressure without him? Speaking of Guardado's replacement, Tata had several options of who to sub in. Does he go with the no-brainer in 𝒐𝒐? Argentina does still have a majority of possession at this point, and having a no-nonsense defensive anchor in the mid will make the most sense. Or does he go more attack-minded with 𝒐𝒂𝒄𝒌 player Orbelín Pineda, who is very versatile and can play damn near anywhere in the mid? He offers some great energy. Well, Tata chose neither and picks Eric Gutiérrez. He's a solid sub, but he's not the level of the other two. One of the first things that Guti does on the field is win a foul around 35 yards away from the goal. The man to take it is Mexico's 10, Alexis El Nagón Vega, who has scored several long-distance goals in his career. The result? The first shot on target for either team as Vega hits the shot on target, but too close to Dibu, who reads it perfectly and plucks it from the air. You start to see Guardado's absent in the mid, as in the dying embers of the first half, Argentina starts to get more comfortable on the ball. Their build-up starts to lead to more chances being created before the half ends. The first half was uneventful though. Mexico somehow ended up with more shots than Argentina despite playing a much more defensive game, with 3 shots to Argentina's 1. Though Argentina did dominate possession while having the ball 67% of the time compared to Mexico's 32. Argentina was not looking good at all. Sure, they had some possession, but outside the last 2 plays in the first half, they didn't create anything while Mexico sat back and prayed that either Vega or Chucky could make some magic. If the score stayed the same, then Argentina was at best 45 minutes from a round of 16 matchup as 2nd seed in their group, likely against the defending champions in France. And then there was always a possibility of Mexico striking first, leaving el albiceleste out of the group stage. The second half starts with more of the same, with Mexico sitting back and forcing mistakes that should have been capitalized on, while Argentina controls possession. Slowly, Mexico's game plan starts to go into the gutter as fatigue starts to set in. Instead of attacking with some numbers, the plan starts to devolve into long balls to Alexis or Chucky, effectively leaving them outnumbered with only 2 attackers. 10 minutes into the half, Mexico's intensity has all but disappeared. Their midfield starts to be overrun by Argentina's. And it seems the plan now was just to absorb Argentina's attack and pray for a draw. Mexico desperately needed some fresh bodies off the bench, especially since by minute 63, Argentina had already used 3 subs, while Mexico still only had done the Guardado sub. Argentina's team was refreshed as in the 57th minute, Guido was subbed off for Benfica's Enzo Fernandez, and in the 63rd there was a double sub of Lautaro coming off for Julian Alvarez and Molina coming on for Montiel. Common consensus was that Edson Alvarez should have been subbed in, as the midfield desperately needed a refresh. This World Cup introduced a concept of sub windows. After COVID-19, many leagues around the world introduced a rule change that allowed teams to make up to 5 subs in the game instead of 3. This World Cup was a little different. If a manager wanted to use 5 subs, they would now have 3 different windows to use all of the subs instead of being able to use them whenever. After the first half sub, Mexico only had 2 sub windows to use 4 subs to go. More than enough time for the fresh bodies to get to work. How did Mexico respond? They subbed off a tired Vega for Odier Antuna and right wing back Kevin Alvarez for Raul Jimenez, of all people. However, before the subs happened, disaster struck Mexico. At the 64th minute, Messi gets the ball deep in the midfield. He passes it to Enzo and makes a run towards the ball as Enzo plays it to Di Maria. Herrera, who was marking Messi, decides to follow Messi for a few steps before deciding for some reason it was best to ignore Messi and guard no one. Di Maria passes it to Messi, who is still around 25 yards from the goal. He takes a touch and after a few steps sends it to the back corner. Herrera was too late to even complicate things for him. And just like that, when his country needed him most, Messi was able to do Messi magic and put his team in the driver's seat towards victory. A desperate Mexico starts to attack more in response to the goal. A loss means that Mexico's World Cup hopes rely on them beating Saudi Arabia by a crap load to even guarantee a spot in the round of 16. Argentina responds to Mexico's sudden urgency in attack by subbing in Cristiano Romero for Di Maria and taking advantage of the gaps Mexico leave as they search for an equalizer. For Mexico's 4th sub, Tata decided to take out a tired and frustrated Lozano for Piojo Alvarado. It was probably the best they could do given the people they left at home. In doing this, he decided to keep a tired Herrera in as he was out of sub windows. Not the best course of action when 2 better midfielders who each offer something different than Edson and Orbelin on the bench not seeing time. And again, while Edson would have admittedly not offered much on the attack, he would have been the perfect role in being the best player available to stop any Argentina counterattack. Something they had lots of, as El Albi Celeste looked like they were the more dangerous team going forward. Mexico would have several corners, but nothing would come of them. In the 85th minute, after one of these corners, the ball would land at the feet of Alvarado, who sends in a cross into a box where 7 Mexico players were waiting for any chance to get a header off. And it goes way short. It doesn't even reach the box. Instead, it falls to Palacios, who heads the ball to Messi. Messi holds up the play for a bit and sends the ball to 𝒂𝒂𝒄𝒌, who would have a clear goal-scoring chance if it wasn't for Gallardo's amazing slide tackle. The resulting throw-in leads to a corner for Argentina. 𝒂𝒂𝒄 takes his time getting the ball and setting up the corner. He plays it short to Messi, who passes it to an open Enzo just outside the 18-yard box on the left wing. He takes a few touches and throws in a few step-overs and feints. From just near the corner of the box, when very light pressure from Guti, he shoots it and scores an absolute beauty of a goal, beating Ochoa's effort. And just like that, any hope that Mexico had of making the round of 16 were all but gone. They haven't showed anything going forward in the last 2 years. And if they can't get at least a goal back, they would have to beat Saudi Arabia by at least 4 to guarantee a spot in the round of 16 without it going to tiebreakers. But alas, the goal never came and Argentina cruised to victory. And with this result, they were alive and in the driver's seat of their own fate. As crazy as things were in matchday 3 and beyond, it's honestly irrelevant to this video series. Mexico ended up being eliminated on a tiebreaker. They haven't missed the group stage since 1978. Though they did miss 2 World Cups in that period of time due to not qualifying and being banned. The result caused mass outrage, and there have been demands for a change in the way Mexican soccer works. And to be fair, in 2024, Mexico and CONCACAF did return to Conmebol for Copa America, but that just ended up being an embarrassment for both Mexico and the US. After Mexico's elimination, World Cup standout Luis Chavez came out saying that the team didn't understand what Tata's game plan against Argentina was, while also taking responsibility by saying the second game, we didn't understand what his plan was. We defended well in the first half, but we had no goals. You can't win a game like that. While Mexico was in shambles after the embarrassing end to the World Cup, Argentina's experience would be totally different. They went on a run all the way to the greatest final in recent history. The result? Well, let me just let Peter Dury take this over.
Lionel Messi has conquered his final peak. Lionel Messi has shaken hands with paradise. The little boy from Rosario, Santa Fe has just pitched up in heaven.